Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something really quite personal, an entry from Rodgery's prayer diary. It's dated May 1st, 2025.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because Rodri takes this specific moment, this reflection, and ties it directly to a Bible passage. We're talking the book of Numbers, chapter 17, verses 1 to 13.
A really well-known story, actually, Aaron's staff budding.
Exactly. It's a story many might know, but Rodri uses it for some deep spiritual reflection.
Right. So our mission here is to kind of unpack Rodgery's take on the story, what Aaron's budding staff meant to them, and maybe see what echoes it might have for, your own journey.
Sounds good. It's a rich passage to explore through someone else's lens.
Okay, let's dive in. Number 17. Can you set the scene for us? What's happening just before this?
Well, there's been grumbling, dissatisfaction among the Israelites, questions about leadership.
About Moses and Aaron specifically.
Yes, particularly Aaron's role as high priest. So God steps in. He tells Moses, right, gather a staff from the leader of each of the 12 tribes.
One staff per tribe, 12 staffs total.
Correct. And crucially, each leader has to write their name on their staff.
Making it very personal, very identifiable.
Absolutely. And Aaron's name goes on the staff for the tribe of Levi.
Yeah.
He's the leader representing them.
Okay, got it. So what happens with these named staffs?
Moses is instructed to place them inside the tent of meeting right before the Ark of the Covenant.
Which is like the symbolic presence of God, yeah.
Exactly. Rodri points this out. It's bringing their authority, their identity, right into God's presence for adjudication almost.
High stakes indeed. And God makes a promise about these staffs.
He does. God says the staff belonging to the man he has chosen will sprout. It will literally show signs of life.
And the point of this miracle?
To put an end to the complaints, to make it crystal clear who God has appointed, especially regarding Aaron's priesthood, which was being challenged.
So people were saying, hey, why him? We're just as qualified.
Pretty much. Rodri interprets this as a moment where God needed to provide, well, undeniable proof, visual confirmation.
And did it work? What did Moses find the next day?
He goes back into the tent, and sure enough, Aaron's staff. It hasn't just, survived the night.
It sprouted.
It had sprouted. But, and this is amazing, it didn't stop there.
Oh, there was more.
Way more. The staff had also budded, it had blossomed with actual flowers, and it had produced ripe almonds.
Wow, like the whole cycle, from dead wood to fruit, overnight.
Exactly, and an impossible accelerated life cycle, a really potent sign.
Okay, so that's the story. Now, Rodri digs into the symbolism here, starting with the staffs themselves. What was Rodri's take?
Rodri really emphasizes the Hebrew word mata. It's not just a walking stick. It signifies identity, status, authority. Think scepter, almost.
So bringing the staff was like bringing your credentials, your claim to leadership?
Precisely. Writing their name on it sealed that connection.
Yeah.
And placing it before the ark, that was submitting that authority for, well, divine validation.
And Rodri highlights that the core issue was Aaron's priesthood, right? The Israelites questioning that specific appointment.
Yes. That seems to be the crux of the issue Rodri focuses on. They felt Moses and Aaron had maybe overstepped or that the choice wasn't legitimate.
So God's method was dramatic, but clear.
Very clear. The budding staff left no room for doubt about who God had chosen for that specific role. It singled Aaron out.
All right, let's zoom in on the miracle itself. The sprouting, or ray as Rodri notes. What's the significance there?
For Rodri, this is huge. It represents resurrected life. I mean, think about it. A staff is a cut branch. It's dead wood.
Right. It shouldn't be able to grow anything.
Exactly. So for it to sprout is a sign of life coming from death, essentially. It's God breathing life into something lifeless.
A symbol of divine power and life itself.
That's how Rodri sees it. It demonstrates God's own life and authority being poured into Aaron, the chosen one. It wasn't just nature. It was a divine act.
And obviously it served that immediate purpose of silencing the critics.
Absolutely. It was meant to stop the complaining. Full stop. Irrefutable proof. Rodri even mentions that phrase, who knew, or unexpectedly highlighting how surprising, how miraculous this was.
And it didn't just stop at a sprout, which is already incredible. Rodri points out the buds, blossoms, and ripe almonds.
Yeah, that progression is key. It's not just life, but maturity, fullness, fruitfulness, all happening impossibly fast.
And the almonds themselves have meaning, don't they? The ripe almond.
They do.
Yeah.
Rodri connects them to the almond tree, which is significant because it's the first tree to bloom in the spring, sometimes even while it's still cold.
Like an early sign of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A symbol of watchfulness, of being ready. Rodri links this drawing from Jeremiah to two things: God's watchful care over his people,
Okay.
and the priest's duty to be watchful, to guard and teach God's word diligently.
So the almonds carry this idea of alertness, of readiness. What about the blossoms? Rodri mentioned those too.
Yes, the white almond blossoms. Rodri sees them as symbolizing God's holiness, his purity.
Implying that the priest should reflect that holiness.
That's the connection Rodri makes. The priest, representing God, should strive for that same purity.
And finally, the ripe fruit, the end result.
That signifies, for Rodri, the outcome of the priestly ministry, leading people to bear spiritual fruit themselves through living according to God's word. It's about effectiveness, about producing something good.
So the whole sequence, deadwood, sprout, bud, blossom, ripe fruit, is a powerful picture of God granting life, authority, and expecting results.
Beautifully put. Rodri sees it as a profound illustration of God's power to choose and empower.
Okay, this is fascinating as biblical interpretation, but how does Rodri connect this ancient story to people today, to contemporary believers?
This is where it gets really applicable. Rodri brings up 1 Peter 2.9, this idea in Christianity that all believers are chosen, part of a royal priesthood.
So not just ordained ministers, but everyone who believes.
That's the interpretation Rodri works with. Being chosen means being set apart from the world to serve Christ. It's a universal calling in this view.
And what does that priestly role look like for the average person, according to Rodri?
It involves things like upholding God's word in your life, striving for holiness, that connection to the blossoms and bearing fruit, which Rodri interprets as sharing the gospel, living out your faith visibly.
And the budding staff metaphor, how does that translate?
Rodri sees it as a parallel. Just like Aaron's dead staff burst into life, believers' lives should constantly experience Christ's resurrection power. It fuels that ongoing growth, the sprouting, blossoming, and fruit-bearing in a spiritual sense.
But life isn't always straightforward growth, is it? Rodri acknowledges challenges.
Oh, definitely. Rodri is realistic. The distractions, the difficulties of life, they can pull you away from living out that priestly identity. They can sort of hinder Christ's life from showing through.
So what's the key then? How do you overcome that?
The emphasis from Rodri is on reliance. It's not about trying harder in your own strength to prove you're chosen or have authority. It's about depending on Christ to fulfill that role through you.
Grace over striving.
Exactly. It's seen as this continuous process. Guarding the word, blossoming with holiness, bearing mature fruit. Not a one-off event, but a lifelong journey fueled by that divine life.
Now, how does Rodri see this playing out in their own life and work, their ministry?
Right. Rodri explicitly connects this understanding to their own ministry. The morning prayer meetings, the spiritual sharing groups they lead.
They see that as their staff, in a way.
Yes, like bringing their own calling, their own service before God. It's their way of exercising that spiritual authority they feel they've been given.
And the goal of that ministry?
It's about helping others connect with God's word, to ground their lives in it. Essentially, helping them bring their own life staffs, their identities, their potential before God, too.
And do they see results, like the budding happening in others?
Rodri does. They mentioned observing spiritual growth in the people involved over time. That becomes, for Rodri, a kind of confirmation evidence that God is choosing and working, both in their ministry and in the lives of the participants.
So it validates their calling, in a sense.
It seems so. And the diary entry shows this desire to empower more people to see themselves as these watchmen, these chosen priests, in whatever context they're in.
A multiplication effect.
Exactly. Rodri links their own consistency in ministry to creating an environment where God's word can, sprout and blossom in others' lives. There's a sense of gratitude seeing more people living out this identity.
And the entry finishes with a forward look.
Yes, a prayer for continued guidance, basically, to keep raising up these chosen priests, helping them flourish in all aspects of life.
So let's bring this back to you listening in. Rodri's reflection really pushes us to think about our own life staff. What does that mean for you? Your identity, your work, your relationships, your potential influence?
Yeah, how do you bring that staff, your unique self, before whatever you hold as a higher purpose or core values? What does that look like practically?
And then there's that powerful image of transformation. What area in your life feels maybe a bit like deadwood right now? Stagnant, perhaps?
What would it mean for that area to unexpectedly sprout, to show signs of new life, new potential, maybe even eventually bear fruit you didn't think was possible? It's a hopeful metaphor, isn't it?
Absolutely. This whole story of Aaron's staff, filtered through Rodri's personal diary, gives us this Rich picture divine choice, yes, but also incredible transformation and the importance of bearing fruit, of making a difference.
So as you go about your day, maybe just mull over that symbolism. The staff, the unexpected life, the blossoms, the almonds. Where might you see or hope for that kind of burgeoning potential in your own circumstances?
It really invites you to think about authority, maybe not in a hierarchical way, but your own agency about validation, about what counts as evidence of a purposeful life for you. What part of Rodri's reflection or the original story itself really sticks with you?
That's a good question to sit with. What resonates most? Perhaps something to think about long after this conversation ends.